It's Monday night, and you know what that means. The Jersey First Television Network proudly brings to you the latest edition of Real Talk. And certainly, ladies and gentlemen, I am the generational talent in Garden State Media and the hero you need right now. That's right, it's me, Fernando Uribe. Happy Monday, ladies and gentlemen, as we're wrapping up the month of September, election 2025. Really, it's in the late innings, as they say here, folks, with 35 days to go from tomorrow until Election Day, and we'll be covering all these great angles and all these great races here in the remaining weeks during this election cycle. And I want to thank you all again for tuning in from wherever and however you may be doing so live right now, of course, on all your social media platforms, whether it's on Facebook, Instagram, or X. And you know what? If you haven't done so already, do me a favor. It takes 5 seconds. Like, comment, and share tonight's episode on all of your social media platforms. Of course, make sure you subscribe to Jersey First TV on YouTube. Click the bell and the subscribe button, and you'll be automatically notified of all the great content we bring you every single week here on Jersey First TV. And of course, whether you get your podcast on Spotify or SoundCloud, download it. Of course, subscribe to us, and you'll be automatically notified of all the exceptional content we bring you every single week here on Jersey First TV. And folks, again, front and center, I'm always representing Jersey First TV, always educating and advocating for the great residents here in the state of New Jersey. We always appreciate you, again, making this a part of your Monday night viewing, whether you're tuning in live, sharing the replay on all your social media platforms. Hey, maybe you're out doing food shopping, walking your dog, whatever, just come back from yoga, whatever it is. I'm sure you have your smartphone on you. Trust me. Tune in Jersey First TV. You'll never be disappointed. Folks, you want to stick around? A jam-packed final thoughts this evening. Obviously, I'll have a lot to say about a very interesting, well, I wouldn't call him a journalist. I think he's a propagandist at this point. But Uncle Dave, David Cruz with NJ Spotlight News. And certainly I'll talk about, quite frankly, folks, why people are losing faith in establishment media. Well, you can look no further than Uncle Dave right there behind me. And just when you think Uncle Dave can't be more of a come mierda, he finds a way to even amaze me in his latest little, sulking on his episode of Reporters Roundtable. Reminds everyone, folks, why he continues to be so insufferable and why we just don't trust establishment media and why really independent media like yours truly continues to thrive in today's media landscape here in New Jersey. So you want to stick around for that. I have a lot to say about David Cruz from NJPBS and NJ Spotlight News. Folks, I also have a special comment tonight. Obviously, it's in regards to my good friend Darren Conway, the owner of Pier 13. And again, nothing personal, Darren, but I just got to give my opinion about something. And quite frankly, I think where you could do better when it comes to social media. More on that later during a special comment. And of course, folks, also, I do want to bestow a very happy congratulatory tone this evening to my good friend, the 13th president of New Jersey City University, Andres Acebo, and his latest accomplishment. I certainly want to pay homage to him and all the great things he's doing there as the new president at NJCU. And of course, folks, when you talk about paying homage to accomplishments, hey, over the weekend, certainly here in Union City, we got to celebrate the 100th anniversary, the centennial of the great city of Union City, a great parade. And I'll talk a little bit more about, quite honestly, the great leadership of our mayor here and state senator, Brian Stack, later on during a special comment. Folks, you don't want to stick around for that. Trust me, you'll really enjoy what I have to say. Folks, tomorrow it's 35 days and counting until Election Day. And of course, here on Jersey First TV, I'm interviewing the candidates that matter during this election cycle and getting the exclusives that you don't really see on other podcasts here in the state of New Jersey. And again, it's why independent media, folks, is thriving, especially here on Real Talk via the Jersey First Television Network. And why not talk to one of the more prominent and interesting candidates during this election cycle? Of course, listen, we've been talking about the gubernatorial race. Obviously, all 80 state assembly seats are up for grabs, but a lot of interesting municipal races throughout the state of New Jersey. Here in Hudson County specifically, folks, of course, we have a mayoral race in the town of Guttenberg, in the city of Kearney, the city of Secaucus, as well as the Moscow city of Hoboken. But of course, most importantly, in Hudson County's largest city, Jersey City, one of the most hotly contested mayoral races I can ever remember in my adult life, is taking place 35 days from tomorrow. And you know what? Let's talk to one of the more interesting candidates during the cycle here. He's my good friend, and he's back on the show once again. He's County Commissioner Bill O'Day, joining us live right now on Real Talk. Commissioner, how are you?
Good. Good evening. Good talking to you.
Good to see you, Bill. Obviously, I know you've been knocking on doors. You've been busy. Had the privilege of sitting at the Five Corners Library last Thursday. in the Journal Square area for a very interesting mural forum. I know you had one over the weekend. I think there's one tomorrow being hosted by the Hudson Media Group and my good friend Pat O'Malley, again, my boss over at Hudson Media Group with the show I do over there. So I'm sure you're looking forward to that. But,
Absolutely.
35 days to go from tomorrow, Bill. You've been knocking on doors. You really have done, I think, a really good job of differentiating yourself from the other candidates in the field. But for everybody tuning in tonight, maybe for the first time and seeing Bill O'Day, the candidate, what does Bill O'Day stand for? And what would Jersey City look like on January 2026 should you be elected mayor?
I think Jersey City will have a 24/7 mayor. I mean, as a commissioner, I've always been there, always available, always accessible, working hard for the people. I think what differentiates me is I'm about getting things done, often without taking any credit. I always learn that let other people take credit, just get things done. So on a day-to-day basis, whether it's housing issues, whether it's employment issues, whether it's filling potholes and getting trees trimmed and making sure garbage in Lincoln Park gets picked up, that's what I'm all about. I mean, I'm there when it comes to the most important issues like affordable housing and getting the budget under control and public safety. But what this city is going to have is a mayor who's there, who's available. And I say this not as a joke, but seriously, right now, City Hall is only based, or the mayor's office is only in 280 Grove Street. As mayor, I'm going to put a mayor's office in the hub on MLK, and 3 days a week I'll be in 280 Grove, and 3 days a week I'm going to be on MLK. And you know how I'm going to get to the office on MLK every day? I'm going to walk there because it's only 7 blocks from my house.
Okay, fair enough. And listen, I think satellite offices are always a good thing in any municipality for sure. Folks, again, if you're just joining us live, like, comment, and share tonight's episode tonight with County Commissioner and Jersey mayoral candidate Bill O'Day. Folks, I know I'm not usually my spiffy look today, rocking my Yankee jersey. Obviously, more on that a little bit later. Obviously, we'll talk some baseball with our mayoral candidate, Bill O'Day, later in the program. Bill, certainly during this election cycle, there's no shortage of topics, right? Property taxes, parking, public safety, affordability. Let's kind of go in no specific order here. I would argue from residents that reach out to me often and say, hey, you're going to have this candidate on or that candidate on, make sure you talk to him or her about A, B, and C. So let's get into the sort of the meat and potatoes of everything. And I would argue that high on the list here when it comes to priorities in this campaign between yourself and the others, Bill, I think it has to be about affordability. I've grown up in Hudson County my whole life. And listen, where I live in Union City, my mayor, also my state senator, does a great job of keeping property taxes down, municipal spending down by and large. I think it's fair to say that hasn't been the case maybe for Jersey City for quite some time. And I know that you want to kind of change the narrative about that. So let's talk about affordability. Is there really a magic wand to fix this, or does it have to be in phases about addressing affordability throughout a city as large as Jersey City?
So I think when you just talk about the budget, you got to walk in there and you've got to look at budgets over a 4-year period, not a 1-year period. If every year you try to solve a $100 million problem, you're not going to solve it. But if you look at it, how you solve it over 4 years, how you bring in new revenue, how you cut waste out of government, you're able to do it. And one of the things I'm committed to doing is creating a real budget committee with real citizens. Some of them are residents, some are financial experts, business experts, retired people from positions in governments throughout the state of New Jersey. In fact, I was joking with Abe Anton earlier on the phone, who's been the county administrator for over 25, maybe close to 30 years. He left for a little bit to go to DCA. That I'd love him to be the chair of it. Why? Because in 27 years in the county, we have not had a downgrade in our bond rating. So I think that approach, take 4 years, take it in chunks. How do we increase our revenue? Where can we cut and save money? Where do we cut waste? Is the right approach to it. Can I tell people I'm going to lower taxes today? I wouldn't be honest if I did, because I just don't know, because there are a lot of things within this budget that I have no access to information. Are there reserve accounts set up for the tax appeals every year? Are there reserve accounts set up for the contracts that haven't been settled for 6 years, which is the contract with Local 245? But as you know, I voted against more tax increases than anybody. So you've got somebody who's willing to go in there and make tough decisions, bring in experts, listen to what those experts have to say, but most importantly, set the tone myself. And that tone is day one, as mayor, I lower my salary by 20%. And I'm going to ask the city council to do the same. So people in the city know we're serious about wanting to get our costs and spending under control.
Bill, I think you were really at the forefront early on in the campaign about that deduction and that reduction in salary for not just yourself, but asking your fellow council members there, obviously, to do the same. I mean, some residents have just said to me quite bluntly, "Is that realistic?" I mean, I said, "Well, listen, I think that's something that if a mayoral candidate is going to put that in writing like that on their campaign literature, on their socials, on their websites, I mean, they got to mean it." So I would argue that you've been consistent from the beginning on this, but what else do you want to do early on?
Well, Fernando, beyond being serious and sincere about it, for the last 15 years, I've refused to take a raise when the commissioners give themselves a raise. Yeah. So I've turned down, I think, 9, 10, or 11 raises. And then when I found out that they forgot to reduce my salary when I got taken out as the vice chairman, and as soon as I found it out, I said, "Well, roll my salary back." I don't know how many elected officials you've ever met that have actually done it. So don't judge me on what I say I'm going to do when it comes to cutting my salary. Judge me on my record and history of not taking salary increases for so many years, and actually also not taking medical benefits. Believe it or not, 20-something years ago, they wanted to pay me not to take the medical benefits. They actually would pay you a portion of what the benefits cost them if you didn't take it. So I went into the office and I said, "Yeah, I don't want the benefits." And they gave me a form to sign, which I would have gotten a payment. I said, "No, I don't want to pay. Can you give me the form where I don't get paid?" And this is a true story. You could call the county administrator. They said, "No one's ever signed that other form." So I said, "Well, I'm going to be the first one." And I signed a document that waived any payment. Now, eventually they got rid of it. Now you pay a portion of your medical benefits. But back 25 or 26 years ago, that they had a way where they paid you not to take your benefits.
They must have had a panic attack having to try to find that form,
Yeah, I want to find it. I should put in a piece of literature. I need to ask for it. I'm sure it still exists somewhere.
Yeah, I'm sure somewhere in an archive for sure. Bill, obviously, in addition to property taxes and affordability, certainly public safety, I think, remains a big concern for Jersey City residents. I mean, obviously, listen, when I frequent downtown a lot. I love nightlife there. I go there often. I don't really go anywhere else in the city. But residents in Jersey City everywhere, I think, deserve safe streets and obviously quality policing and everything else. We might not be seeing that, right? Obviously, I think the current public safety director has come under a lot of scrutiny in recent years. Yep. And I would argue rightfully so. I can call balls and strikes fairly on this program. I think that Director Shea has gotten a lot of grief. I think a lot of it's been self-inflicted, self-induced. Yep. I think a lot of residents will be happy to see him go at the end of this year. But having said that, again, it's not a magic wand where we can fix it all in one shot, but is it just hiring more police officers? Is it hiring maybe social workers to work with police officers? What's a blueprint you think is feasible for all of Jersey City when it comes to public safety?
So a few things. First of all, eliminate these fixed posts. They have officers sitting in cars that don't move, that don't leave. And if you go to them, they say, "We're not allowed to leave this post." Well, that actually makes about 50 by 50 on each side safe, and the rest of that neighborhood unsafe. So eliminate those fixed posts. They do them in New York City. I guess that's where the Director Shea got it from. They've been a monumental failure in Jersey City. Make them patrol small areas. Secondly, we've got to improve 911. The current director wants to privatize it. That's not going to happen. We need to properly staff it. We need to properly train the individuals who are manning it. I had an individual who at 5 a.m. called the 911 number 4 times and no one answered the phone. Think about that. No one answered the phone. So we have to staff it and we have to train those individuals properly. We also need to bring back more community policing. Let officers walk areas, patrol small areas, get out of their cars, meet individuals. We have urban enterprise zone funds that fund some extra duty officers within our special improvement districts and other parts in business districts. I want to put more dollars in that, get more visibility of police. The other thing that I think is critical, and none of these cost more money, is I want to eliminate what I call over-response. Have you ever showed up at a quality of life incident or at a small car accident and seen 5 police vehicles there? Why would we need 5 police vehicles at a small quality of life issue? I saw one even today where there were 3 vehicles and I wondered it. A couple of Sundays ago, I saw one where there were 5 vehicles and there were just 2 individuals sitting on the steps in front of the Sherwin-Williams on Communipaw Avenue. We need the officers as soon as possible to be dispatched back out to report and address crimes in the city and in the district where they are. Maybe you leave one unit there, but we don't need to have all of them. And then we don't use things like drones the way that I think we could, which could be helpful in fighting crime. But those are the main ones. I've always been a supporter of minimum policing, so I want to make sure that we continue to have a minimum policing number. I want to be supportive of the police to give them good morale, but there are ways to get them to patrol better, to respond better, and there are more incidents of small offenses that are more quality of life that we can probably have non-police officers respond to that, so they're spending more time patrolling to make areas and neighborhoods safer. And lastly, you mentioned it, Arrive Together, which is how they deal with issues that relate to mental health. Arrive Together needs to be 24/7. Right now, I think it's only weekends. You need to have it 24/7. Take a mental health professional, have them available to go to report there with the police officers. And then at the end of the day, the individuals should not be taken to the correctional center in 95% of the cases. They probably don't even need to go to the medical center. I'm committed to creating a de-escalation facility on MLK, Oak and MLK. I got to figure out $500,000 to renovate the facility. We have the dollars already there to operate, working with a qualified federal health center.
Bill, one thing that certainly I think along the lines of policing, and certainly, I mean, obviously it came under some local news with you and your team, and obviously the way we look at sanctuary city policies, and certainly that's been a big issue at the state level. Obviously, the gubernatorial race is front and center with that. Obviously, we'll find out coming up, in January. Will we have a governor that will just continue what Governor Murphy's been doing for the last 8 years, or will we have a governor that just rescinded on day one and obviously rescind sanctuary statehood at a state level, and obviously whether or not that trickles down to municipalities and how that's enforced? I mean, I'm sure that'll come under some discussion, but at the end of the day, in Jersey City, I mean, going back to Mayor Fulop certainly establishing it as a sanctuary city. I know in recent weeks we've seen ICE going to communities throughout New Jersey, especially in Jersey City. Listen, I'm a conservative. I'm all about enforcing federal law. That's what they're about. I mean, at the end of the day, some residents are like, hey, listen, I just want our streets and communities safer. What do you say to Jersey City residents that maybe are just, don't want to speak out as loud as I do, for example, when it comes to, federal immigration enforcement in somewhere like Jersey City that, like a lot of New Jersey, there's so many immigrant communities. And I know that you've been standing up for them. But at the end of the day, some people are just concerned about the number of illegals in New Jersey, maybe in Jersey City, Bill. What do you say to residents tonight tuning in?
So what I say to them is, look, violent criminals, we all agree, should be taken off the streets. No one disagrees with that. I don't even think advocates disagree with it. But I'm supportive of, for the rest, I'm supportive of us as a sanctuary city. 2 weeks ago when a gentleman was arrested with his daughter in the car, there was a huge outcry. I went that day and met with the wife, and I'm still working to help her get proper representation because technically she's not here legally either. She has 2 children. And because she reported a domestic violence incident, she's now at risk of being deported out of this country too. Do we want to have a place where people are afraid to report incidents like domestic violence because of what might happen to them? So, we probably disagree, Fernando. If they're a violent criminal, yes, we let them be arrested, let them be deported. But when it comes to everyone else, I mean, we're here to protect and have a sanctuary city. I know people that have lived in this city more than 20-something years. They work, but technically they're here illegally. Do we really think we want all those individuals deported? I don't. Their children go to our schools. Their children go to school with my grandson. So I think that we're in a world where there are these extremes, and that's what the problem is. So, I'm generally supportive of the sanctuary city, but I'm sensitive to the fact, as I think everyone is, that violent criminals can't be harbored and protected. And I think the vast majority of people kind of land in that area. I don't think most people want to take the neighbor who's been here 10 years and has an expired work visa or an expired student visa, but hasn't gotten any trouble, hasn't done anything wrong, and earning a decent living, and telling them, get out, go back to where you came from.
All right, fair enough. I think it's important for residents to hear these talking points, Bill, and certainly, obviously, for some, it certainly makes a difference. And at the end of the day, I think for some, They just want safe communities. I mean, obviously, we'll let residents decide as they, are sort of sifting through the policy prescriptions for every candidate. Back to your platform, also, we talk about parking. That it's that dreaded word that, it seems like developers, if they see even 1 square inch of land, it's like Christmas morning for them. Having said that, we're seeing so much development. And I'll just give you an example where, again, as a lifelong resident, driving through Journal Square reminds me of driving through Gotham City now. It's like, wait a second, I feel like Bruce Wayne driving through Gotham City. I don't recognize Journal Square, obviously, with the buildings. I don't recognize a lot of the development because of, what's going on downtown. Listen, case in point, and I get that after COVID, a lot changed when it comes to rents and properties and everything else. But, I loved Barcade in downtown, right in Pedestrian Plaza.
Yeah, Barcade, with all the old video games.
Yeah, I loved Barcade. It was a great first date spot for me. Enjoyable. But just seeing iconic venues like that, dying out, being bought up, seeing what the plans are going to be for a new building. And listen, whether it's in Hoboken next door, nearby by me, or anywhere in Hudson County, it just seems, Bill, that, all these luxury rentals are going up. Like, I've leased vehicles forever from different dealerships on 440 going back to 10, 15 years. I don't recognize 440 when I drive there now to get an oil change at the Buick, at the Lincoln Buick Center, because I'm like, wait a second, I look across the way on 440. These are buildings I never would have thought would even be there 10, 15 years ago. It just seems like, I get it. Across the river in New York, it's too expensive to live in. It might get even more expensive coming up after Election Day. We'll see. But but having said that, people are migrating to Jersey City. It's an attractive destination. Property values are more affordable. But having said that, Bill, I mean, we're seeing all these buildings going up $2,000, $2,500 a month rents for like 900 square. Like my living room.
$2,000 is not bad. If you can get a $2,000 apartment for 900 square feet, I'll rent it tomorrow.
No, I listen, and again, and like my living room and guest room are 900 square feet. I mean, the rest of my house, you know what I'm saying? So I look at these rents and I'm like, my goodness, it's really pricing out lifelong residents, especially in Jersey City. Listen, folks, name the neighborhood. I think there's a lot of lifelong residents that ultimately are being displaced. Bill, again, they may not be a magic wand, but how do we address this when development seems to be on steroids for some years now?
So here's a challenge. We desperately need affordable units. And if we stop development, then we won't have any affordable units. And the backlog, I think the RPA, Regional Plan Association, thinks Jersey City needs 3,700 units. The only way to get units is part of that development. So some of the things I want to do is take sites owned by mosques and synagogues and churches and allow them to upzone, because I think then by upzoning and creating at least 50% of those units of affordable housing, we can help do that. I put together a plan which I believe over the next 4 years can start construction on 2,800 units, complete construction on 1,400 of the 2,800. And of that 1,400, probably 700, I'd have to give a lot of credit to Mayor Fulop, because they've started before I would take office. So I think we have to do that, but we do have to balance it. And that is a challenge. Building close to Journal Square with density, I kind of support it. Where's the parking? I agree with you. We've got to find a place to build parking decks. I've talked about maybe taking part of the Manor site, which is on Newark Avenue below Tunley Avenue, and convincing them to put a parking deck and building vertical above it, and we would share the parking. We need parking for the new courthouse, for the jurors that would be, going on jury duty at the new courthouse, as well as some of our employees. But also Indian Square, which is right up the block, could use some of those same spaces for their shoppers, because their shoppers come at night, their shoppers come on the weekend when we're not using those spaces. So you'd have those spaces, you'd have spaces for the people that live in the area. So I want to be creative when it comes to stuff like that. But knowing affordable housing as well as I do, having worked on projects with over 800 units of affordable housing, I keep forgetting how many other ones I've done over the course of the last 20 years in my role as a executive director of a nonprofit called the Elizabeth Development Company. We need it, like we desperately need it. And we need it for 30, 40, 50% area median income, which is, we're talking about individuals that can pay $1,100, $1,200, $1,300 a month in rent. Like you said, If you could get me a 900 square foot unit for $2,000, I could get you a lineup for people that would like to take it. So that's what I think we need to do. We've got to balance, and in balancing, development that moves ahead has to have a good percentage of affordable. I think 80-20 deals work. 20% minimum affordable. 703 North Avenue is going to have 25% workforce. But the difference between me and everybody else running is that I know how to do it. I know how to sit down with a developer. I know how to negotiate, work their numbers, and get those units done. And, Jim McGreevy got upset with me because I pointed out that as the mayor of Woodbridge, he created zero units of affordable housing. And he said, well, I didn't need to because the people that live there, they're okay. They don't need it. Well, then I had to remind him that under the fair share, he was required to build 1,351 units, and he still builds zero. So we need it. We desperately need it because all these other cities that could be building affordable housing where residents of Jersey City could go, closest, say, even Bayonne, they're not building any affordable housing neither. So we've got to take care of our own problem in our own town. Yeah. It's a challenge because you got to allow density in order to ensure that you get to
well said. Bill, there's one of my favorite lines in The Godfather was, hey, listen, this isn't personal. It's just business. And, I'm sure that, candidates try to remain amenable and amicable during this race. But at times it seems like during this race among all the candidates, it's hard not to take it personal. You're running for mayor, but it seems like at certain points, I think the candidates don't like each other. And you want to stay amicable and civil, but how hard has that been during this race? Because I think that, it depends who you ask. I mean, there might be some animosity running among the candidates that doesn't get talked about a lot. So again, is it not personal, or is it just business, or is it a little bit of both?
I think it's mostly business, but within business, like, you've got to be honest, right? Like, you can't say that. Look, I say, look at my record as a public elected official. I think that's fair game. I think that's open game. And I know that, again, Jim got upset when I pointed out he got fired from JSEP. But those were things that were reported in the newspaper. So you can't be more fair ground about that. Personally, I like Jim. I think he's not always generally sincere. I'll put it in a nice way. But that doesn't mean I don't like him. But whatever your record in the past has been, you can't run away from it. What you've done as an elected, if one person's going to come up and say, when I did this, I did a million great things, and then that there's a million not good things that were done, shame on me if I don't bring that out in any public forum that I do, because then I wouldn't be giving the people that I'm asking to vote for me all the facts that they need to do to make a fair and honest decision.
Bill, when it comes to your ticket, obviously, you're leading the way, as they say, and, coming up in 35 days, I mean, it's a very plausible reality that there are going to be runoffs, not just
Absolutely.
with you. And listen, I've gone on record as saying that I believe on the night of November 4th, we're going to be preparing for a runoff between yourself and Jim McGreevy. That's my prediction. People don't have to like it, but that's how I'm calling balls and strikes here. Having said that, people are going to obviously discuss, who can Bill drag across the finish line with him. And I think that's a perfectly realistic, expectation to sort of look at, who you can. A lot of people tell me all the time, Bill's ticket is really diverse. Absolutely. Not just because of, gender or race, but I think because of backgrounds, occupations. Let's talk a little bit about your ticket, because again, you're the captain, but the rest of the team is just as important as well. So let's talk about your ticket and who stands out right now during this, race with 35 days to go.
So first of all, I'm not dragging anybody over with me. We're walking in together.
Okay.
We're crossing the line together. I think that our ticket is second to none. I think Pam Johnson's experience and reputation speaks for itself. The Anti-Violence Coalition, the program she's doing for our youth in our community. Joel Brooks, could have and should have won last time. He won on the machines. Had he had a better vote by mail and early voting effort, he would have been the councilman. Tom Zuper, I think, is a superstar. Tom lost an election, and he didn't go away for 4 years. He doubled down. He started doing things for our seniors, doing things for our youth, started a nonprofit, took over the presidency of the Association of the Journal Square Neighborhood Associations. So he's a superstar. Elvin Dominique has turned out to be a star. I always knew he would be in the Heights. He ran at large last time, but I knew if you gave him a district, and that district has about 30 2% of the voters are Hispanic. Watch him. Nobody works harder. And he's day-to-day working with helping people with constituent issues. He texts me, he emails me. Sometimes he's a little annoying, but he's getting things done, which has always been my slogan, getting things done. Downtown, we got Daniel Israel, LGBTQ. He would be the first elected. We've had one, but that council member was appointed. He's been a great surprise. How hard he works. I saw the end of the forum a couple of weeks ago. He knows the issues as a former reporter for 11 years. He knows the issues. He understands the issues. He's a guy who's exposed corruption, and now he wants to be an elected official who's going to help not only expose it, but solve problems and help people. Pastor Howell, again, well-known, well-established in the community, a dynamic speaker. I can't wait till we have a couple of debates or forum and whatever, because we're going to really see him shine. And then at large, Christine Zadroga-Hart, someone who's dedicated her life to Jersey City, an educator, the athletic director at McNair Academic High School, and a leader within the union movement. And again, Joe Brooks is also a leader in the union movement. Sandra Robinson Green, the legacy of Robinson versus Cahill. And that's why one of our positions is to fight to change back the formula for school aid, because we're getting screwed in Jersey City to the tune of $250 million a year. As I've said in many debates, Patterson gets $583 million. We get $148 million. Something's wrong with that. Think about this, Fernando. Union City to the north, that has a fraction of the number of students that we have, gets 40, 50 or more, maybe $80 million more than we do. Makes no sense. And then last but not least, the dean, who's Danny Rivera. Danny's the longest serving Latino councilman. And I think even despite having all of those candidates running, he's going to come out number one in the first round.
Bill, let me ask you, because I mean, obviously you brought up the point about school funding, and again, I'm not one to ever be combative with you, but I mean, I think is that also more a reflection of, again, and I'm not saying this to brag, but I mean, State Senator Stack, I think, in terms of as a legislator compared to maybe those that represent Jersey City, maybe aren't as assertive or proactive in Trenton. Am I hearing a little bit of a backhanded swipe at the legislators that represent Jersey City for not working as hard?
I'm not going to say it's a backhanded swipe, but the reality is kids are suffering, right?
Sure.
You create a formula that's fair to all the kids, whether it's the number of children that get free school lunch, plus the number of students that are eligible or qualify under special ed programs. Add those numbers together, take all of the cities that are eligible, and then give it out on a per student ratio based on that. So yes, I think part of that is, if you ask Raj Mukherjee, he says straight up in 2018, Jersey City was screwed for political reasons. And I think that as the mayor, whatever I need to do, whether it's go to court, whether it's demand that the legislators that are there, and I know Jerry Walker will when he gets down there, speak up, stand up, have the courage even to vote against the budget if it doesn't restore the aid funding formula to where it should be. And then those that don't, then at that point in time, they wouldn't have my support if they don't stand up for us to get that corrected. So rather than take a shot at them, I think we have to just let them know and put them on notice that they need to be more outspoken and be willing to say, I'm not going to vote for this budget unless you come up with a formula that's fair to Jersey. If we get 150 million of the 250 million a year back, we're still going to be able to. You want to know how we can get taxes stable? Right there. One thing to get our taxes stable and also put more dollars into some of the programs to open up more of our public schools for after-school programs, for homework help, for tutoring, and even for recreation.
Bill, speaking of recreation, perfect segue into my next question here. Obviously, that's been a big topic, I know, for yourself as well as other candidates. Again, hard to sort of wave a magic wand to sort of maybe alleviate this, but what are some things early on that your administration could do to, A, create a viable recreation program, and B, a sustainable one, because it's going to need funding as well?
So two things. So first of all, talking about what I've done. I became a freeholder. There were no free summer camps. They're now probably countywide, I don't know, 12, 15. There's 4 just in Lincoln Park, which is in my home district. Probably close to 20 if you count all the county parks. So free summer camps, 1 in each ward minimum. And how do we fund them? A lot of it can be funded with philanthropics. Goldman Sachs should be sponsoring one. Citigroup should be sponsoring one. Those other Goya should be sponsoring one. Those big corporate entities, many that got tax breaks from the city, LEFRAC, they should be the sponsors of it to defray much of the cost of it. And some of those camps may be better run, and it may be expansion of existing camps like the PAL has, so they can be free to all the kids that live in those areas of the city. Secondly, what I would call youth development centers, but also focus on things like homework help, tutoring, arts, performing arts, arts and crafts, robotics. So we need to get our young people away from just playing video games and let them socialize, socially interact at those centers. Now, some of those centers can be in schools, so we don't necessarily need to build them. Some of them can be expansion of existing centers like the Boys and Girls Club, like the PAL, like Blessed, who I've been working with to get a site where they can put their classrooms, their offices, and build 18 units of affordable housing above it. So each ward should have one center funded by the city in part. And some of it's just taking some of these rec employees that probably aren't really doing that much and putting them in a location where we're going to make them to be more accountable. Tie in nonprofits that are more dedicated and passionate to delivering services for our young people, and then incorporating a lot of different kinds of services, recreation being part of it, but performing arts, other programs. I went to Cheese Vasquez. He had a summer program for painting. I bought 5 of the paintings from the youth. I made sure every kid signed it because I got a funny feeling I might get some money 20 years for one of those paintings, because that's how good some of those paintings that they did were.
No, certainly. Bill, obviously, going to the 35 days from tomorrow, a lot of people, including myself, have been saying, like, I think this is going into a runoff between you and Jim McGreevy. We'll find out, obviously, 35 days from now. But having said that, running a campaign is expensive. It's laborious. It's time-consuming. How has fundraising been going? Obviously, with 35 days to go, is it still feasible to hold fundraisers or mixers or things of that nature?
We're still doing it. We our goal was to raise 200 a quarter, and we've been able to do that and a little more every quarter from when we started. We'll spend at or around or a little more than 2 million, but probably close to 2 million during the campaign. McGreevy will spend at least twice that, but he's already spent like 8-9 times what we've spent. And he's hit his ceiling. So we're also better. We spend our money better. We don't mail 5 pieces to the same family in the house. We save on money when it comes to that. We've got a lot more volunteers. I think one of our greatest things are our volunteers. We have made about 18,000 volunteer phone calls, identified almost 8,000 people that say they support us. So we keep doing it. We've got a fundraiser in the middle of October. I've got a couple of other smaller fundraisers planned. We expect in the month of October to probably raise close to another 200, which would be the equal of a quarter. But it's a lot of work. It is laborious. I'm not going to lie with you. It's a pain in the neck to do it. I'm good at asking for other people, Fernando. I've never been that good when I have to ask for myself.
Sure. No, fair enough. Folks, here, it's about 7 o'clock here on the East Coast. We're about to wrap up shortly here with County Commissioner and Jersey Mayoral candidate Bill O'Day here on the show. Folks, like, comment, and share tonight's episode. It really helps get the episode and content out to more people. And, of course, it shows your support for independent media here with Jersey First TV. Bill, obviously, again, looking back 35 days from tomorrow is Election Day. A lot of people see this going into a runoff. And I think a lot of people feel good for you because they say, well, based on the fact that, based on my prediction, people agree with me, it'll be you and McGreevy in the runoff. Do you feel confident you're going to be able to sort of maybe rally the votes from the other candidates that will miss the runoff because they'll look at you as, an established member of the political community in Jersey City? You've been a lifelong public servant. Do you feel that, again, checking off those boxes, do you think that will help you get across the finish line, as they say, because you'll be able to get support from those candidates and those fan bases that didn't get to the runoff after November 4th?
Look, I think McGreevy can't win on the first round, and once he doesn't win on the first round, he's in deep trouble because he spent so much money. He's raised expectations from all these outsiders, Middlesex County, South Jersey, wherever. So and I have good working relationships for a long period of time with every other candidate that's running, right? So I've worked with Joyce as she's been president of the city council. I've worked on a number of issues with James, like right to counsel. In fact, he joked at the forum on Saturday that when my district went into downtown, he and I did an Easter egg hunt together last year. Of course, we each did our own Easter egg hunts this year because we were both running. So I have a good working relationship with him. And Musab Ali, as he would tell you, was a protege of mine when he first ran for the school board. So I think the ability to do that and consolidate is I'm not going to say it's easy, right? It's never easy until you do it. But I think that yes, I think that at the end of the day, that is going to be something that we're going to be able to do. And I also think that based on my track record and my keeping my word and getting things done, it's going to be pretty easy to get that done. Nothing's easy. It'll be rough. It'll be tough. It'll get a little rough and tumble on both sides when we get to the runoff. We've seen that before. We're prepared for that again. But yeah, I think if you look at who those different candidates are, you'll see that they have been much closer and have longer relationships with me than they would with Jim McGreevey.
Bill, if you could educate our audience tonight, we keep hearing the word polling comes up a lot. We've been hearing it obviously in the gubernatorial race, certainly the assembly races, but at a municipal level, if you could just educate our audience tonight, because we hear the term, oh, internal polling says this and that poll says that. So when we talk about internal polling, what is it consist of in terms of sample size, questions? How do we break that down to help residents, really comprehend what internal polling means and how beneficial or helpful it is for candidates?
So what internal polling generally does is define where a race is at a date, and then define how you frame your message, who you frame your message to, and how what's your pathway to victory is. We were happy with our internal poll. While we're a strong second, we saw our growth. We saw our growth among undecideds, where they lean to us. We saw our growth over just the simple fact that the name rec of McGreevey is like 20 points higher than ours. And when you take out just people that know all of us, we're good. We're there. We're right. We're there. We're neck and neck. And then with undecideds, we're much in a much better position and much stronger. So I can't give away my strategy. That would be foolish to do. I don't want my opposition to know that. But our pathway, our message, and some of it I've talked about, we get things done. We'll stand on what we've done over the course of my political career and match that up to any of the other candidates. I think once that happens, good and bad, I think that puts us in what's the strongest position. But yeah, internal polling is to shape where you are. How do you shape your message? Who do you go after? Who do you target? And who maybe you have to take a couple of shots at.
Bill, you've been able to work with people across the aisle for decades, obviously in your capacity as a freeholder, then obviously a county commissioner, and so been involved in government.
And I was a councilman back.
Yes, for a very long time. So you understand the premise. Having said that, with so many candidates on the ballot, I mean, it almost looks like a scroll from like Game of Thrones at this point, right? I mean, it might take a few days just to sort of go through that. As we obviously vote by mail has begun. Early voting will begin, I think, just in a couple of weeks. Obviously,
I think the 22nd. 25th, October 25th.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be here before you know it. Obviously, on election day. Having said that, it just seems like it might be a very split council in terms of who gets across the finish line from different tickets. How confident do you feel? Because listen, this has been a really long race. I can't remember in my adult life how long this race has been.
Yep.
It feels like forever. But having said that, once, January comes, you got to govern. And it might be a very big reality where a council's very split. Maybe the most split I've ever seen a Jersey City Council, have that makeup. Do you feel confident, especially when it comes to talking about the budget and taxes and maybe shrinking City Hall on Grove Street? Do you feel confident you can do that where it might be a very divided council for you?
I think that the advantage I have is 35 years as an elected legislator. So within county government in the early years, we fought like cats and dogs. We butted heads every day. They tried to take me out. I had to beat the political machine, I think 3 times, 97, 98, and then 2000, I think it was 2002. But eventually they realized that I knew what I was doing, and they knew that it was better to have me inside when decisions were made than fighting on the outside. So whether you run with me or not with me, we're all going to be working together. Decisions are going to be made, and we're all going to be involved in making the decision-making process. I think when you do that, that's how you get problem solved. And maybe it's never exactly what I want, and it's not what they may want, but we come to a consensus that we can all live with and what's good for Jersey City. So I think that what's unique about me is that I know what it's like to be a legislator. I know how to respect legislators. I know how to treat them fairly, make them part of the decision-making process, not, hey, here's my decision, yes or no. If I try to do that, which I think other candidates may do, one in particular, then I think what's going to happen is you're going to have a lot of problems. We're all going to make decisions together because especially with the budget, there are a lot of tough decisions to be made. And I want to make sure that they're made in a consensus, as well as transparent and open to the public. I like to have numerous public hearings, show everybody what the budget is, show how we address a problem in 4 years, not 1 year, and try to get their buy-in. I think transparency, especially when it comes to the budget, is critical if we're going to solve that problem.
Bill, before I let you go, obviously we've talked to Bill O'Day, the former councilman, current county commissioner, current mayoral candidate. But let's just talk to Bill O'Day, the guy, the regular guy that lives on the south side of Jersey City, right? And just, gets his coffee at a certain shop every day.
Tea, no coffee. Tea at the
yeah, right. So let's just talk some random stuff here. October's already around the corner. Obviously, the baseball playoffs. I mean, it's unseasonably warm for October, obviously, but you'd always think about the Fall Classic. Certainly, at a local level, the Yankees are in the playoffs. We'll see how far they go. I think if I remember, I think you're a Braves fan, right?
Yeah. So you got good memory. You got a good memory.
Listen, that's why the show's good, brother. That's why the show's good. But Bill, what do you think the Braves got to do in 2026 to get back into that contention in the NL East with Philadelphia and the Mets and everybody else?
Might have to spend some money, bring a couple of players on board. I think that's what they're going to have to do.
Okay. I remember you were also a Niner fan. Nice start to the season. I know.
Yeah, we lost yesterday. I don't have as much time to follow it, but yeah, we lost yesterday. But we got a lot of injuries, right? We were dealing with a lot of injuries. We could have won yesterday. A couple of INTs. Purdy's, I think, still a little bit banged up. But look, I think they're going to definitely get into the playoffs.
Certainly. Bill, I remember you're a big pro wrestling fan. I know you grew up watching, as I still do. John Hines and I are big marks, as they say. It's interesting. A piece in the Wall Street Journal, I think, for someone like yourself and I that grown up watching wrestling, talked about how since, merging under a new corporate umbrella called TKO with the UFC and everything else, it just seems like WWE is a reminder that everything when it comes to entertainment has become more expensive. I mean, case in point, over the summer, SummerSlam, which was one of the marquee events of the WWF, now WWE for some time, it was over 2 nights, but it was expensive. I mean, it's costing families. It could almost price out the potential for new fans. For you watching it before, for me, it used to be affordable to go to the Garden or the Meadowlands Arena or the Nassau Coliseum back in the day. It almost really, I think it really just reminds us how expensive everything really has become for regular people and families. And, it kind of makes me a little nostalgic looking back to the more affordable days of pro wrestling. Do you miss those days as well, Bill?
So as a high school kid, we went to every wrestling match. They were always on Monday nights. They were always at Madison Square Garden. They were always affordable. We'd hop on the PATH train either at Journal Square or Grove Street, depending whether it was after school at St. Peter's Prep and I didn't go home. We went directly there. I loved it. We used to get great seats. I remember it being close to ringside a few times. And then when the rep matches were over, we'd go back outside because you buy your tickets right there. I loved it. We had Bruno Sammartino, we had Backlund, we had Pedro Morales, and then obviously we went to the Hulk Hogan era, and I continued to follow. Yeah, I really miss that. There's an event at I think it's October. Wish I knew the date. I got to let you know, but I think it's October maybe 13th at Hudson Catholic. It's wrestling. Most of the names I don't know, but Tony Atlas is featured on it.
Wow, WWE. I'm
going to go there just to see big Tony Atlas. Yeah, they got one big name from the past there, and I'd love to just go.
Yeah, there. Mr. USA, the WWE Hall of Famer. Bill, real quick here. Obviously, it's been a very tumultuous year politically. I think it's fair to say that there's some toxicity in our political climate. I think both sides can be guilty of it. I'm intellectually honest. I can say that out loud. But again, as a public official, and obviously you're running for mayor, are there ever moments for you where, again, because of, listen, we saw obviously the assassination of Charlie Kirk, a leading conservative podcaster. We've seen violence, inflicted on people from both sides of the aisle, right? Obviously, as a very visible person, a public official, an elected official, any safeguards, any precautions you've had to take maybe during this cycle that you feel, when you see this stuff happening, it kind of puts it in perspective. When you go out there, you're running for mayor. I mean, you're not a divisive person, Bill, but at the end of the day, you're a public person. And if anything, we've learned that being the public eye, I mean, unfortunately, can get you vilified and in some cases, unfortunately, be murdered on national television, like we saw a couple of weeks ago. Any precautions you're taking? And right now, like, is there something we can do when it comes to this political climate? Because it's just so polarizing and really charged up, man.
So I don't take any precautions. Usually I drive myself around. Sometimes my campaign folks yell at me because I shouldn't do that. Every once in a while I'll let someone drive me, especially on a Saturday when there's so many events. Look, I walk from my house to Lincoln Park. I walk from my house to go shopping. I remember last year I walked from Lincoln Park all the way to the beginning of the anti-violence march on MLK. And I laughed because some folks that saw me were like, "What are you doing walking down this way?" So no, I can't do that. I would get out of this business before I would allow myself and how I conduct my life and my ability to have that freedom go away. And what can we do? I don't know. We just need to we need to realize that while we have a right to disagree and strongly disagree, we can't let it go to violence. Violence does never ever solves any problem. It's never ever solved any problem. So we, whether liberal, whether conservative, whether it's progressive, we can't get violent. It just doesn't help.
Yeah, yeah,
doesn't help, and it sets a bad example for our young people.
Well said, Bill. Obviously, you're looking to succeed Steve Fulop. Obviously served 3 terms, failed during the recent primary, might run again, who knows, maybe in 29, depending on what happens now coming up on November the 4th. But having said that, how should we remember Stephen Fulop and his legacy as mayor in Jersey City?
I think that he did a lot of good things, and then I think he made some mistakes, but everyone makes mistakes. So technologically, he moved us into the 21st century, and he gets criticisms now because everything's not as great as they'd want it to be, but he moved it forward that way. He moved after decades, getting the restoration of the Lowe's Theater started. I think he did a lot of really good things. But when you run for governor and you're spending your time running around the state, you're left at the mercy of the people you leave here to run. And when he did that, I think a lot of those people can't match up and meet up to him personally. And because he wasn't able to have his eyes on everything all the time, things started to go back, and a lot of issues and mistakes were made. And on things like the budget, like what Steve did with kicking it down the curb, he's not unique. That's been going on since I was a councilman in the 80s and the 90s. So I think that world, somebody just has to come in, even be afraid to say, or not be afraid to say, maybe I don't get reelected by putting together a 4-year budget that's going to stabilize our taxes, even though some of the decisions we make are not popular. So on overall, look, Steve's a friend. I supported him when he first ran, and I support him in his other elections when he ran for reelection. I think he's done a lot of good stuff with development. I think we could have done more affordable housing. But things like Bayfront was languishing out there for 2 decades before he became the mayor. That's happening now. So I think, and I think as people look now, as he nears the end of his term and he's not running, I think people are going to look a lot more favorable overall about Steve Fulop. Because even whether bike lanes are controversial, he had the courage to go put up protective bike lanes and do things to slow traffic. So I think overall, he's going to be looked at better once he's gone. And you look at where we were when he came in, look where we were technologically, look the way things were going on within the government, and then look where they are today. But usually as time goes, in the beginning, when you're still there, people only find the things that are wrong, and they crucify you over the things that you're wrong about. Like the Pompidou. I think that he got enamored with the Pompidou and lost the perspective of it's just something we can't afford because we can't subsidize the operations of that to a tune of $6 million a year with all the issues and problems that we have.
Bill, any big events coming up here? Obviously, 35 days to go. Any mixers? Also, social media handles and website information. People looking to donate, where can they go find you?
You know what? They should just call me on my cell.
Okay.
201, if you want to donate, text me on my cell, 201-332-1187. What's my thing? Reach Bill O'Day at gmail.com. If you want to send me an email, reachbillodday@gmail.com. And if you Google my name, you get all the other social media stuff that we do.
Okay.
We just started running some cable ads. We've been doing a lot of streaming. We started streaming ads a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
I don't know what big events. We're going to do some big Halloween events. We always do huge Halloween events. That's outside of just running for office. We don't, some people start a nonprofit when they decide they want to run for office. I've had one in operation for 20 plus years. I always remember when COVID started, we were bringing food to the senior buildings, funding out of our own pocket before even the federal government started giving money for that. And now 5 years later, we continue to do that. And we do that every 2 Tuesdays a month. So now we're running along. We got fundraisers. We're knocking on doors. And yeah, we're looking for donations. So if you want to text me or email reachbillodday@gmail.com, we'd be gladly to sit down and talk to you.
Well done, Bill. Again, we'll talk to you during the campaign trail. Best of luck. And we appreciate you supporting Jersey First TV. Take care.
Thank you very much. Take care. Bye.
Take care. Folks, good stuff there. Bill O'Day, County Commissioner and Jersey Mayoral candidate. Obviously, if you're just tuning in live right now, folks, it's 7:20 here on the East Coast. A lot to break down there with Bill O'Day. Obviously, if you caught the interview, a lot of topics we were able to break down and certainly discuss as really tomorrow, 35 days to go until Election Day. And I've said this on the show repeatedly. I think it's going to be Jim McGreevey and Bill O'Day in the runoff. I think that's a realistic expectation about what's going to go on in 35 days. And we'll see. But listen, folks, this is a guy who's been in the business for a long time. This is a guy who has been in the trenches, as they say, has rolled up his sleeves, has been through the wars, and he doesn't mind the fight. So obviously, if you got to enjoy tonight's episode, an interview with Bill O'Day, obviously, I think you got to learn a lot about what his campaign represents heading into Election Day, which again is 35 days from tomorrow. Obviously, vote by mail has already begun. Early voting will begin at the end of October, right around around the time where it's Halloween season, as they say, in Jersey City, and we'll be keeping an eye on that race, obviously coming up, but with 35 days to go, right from tomorrow. So again, folks, being the leader in independent media makes a difference when we get to talk to candidates. Again, unfiltered, unafraid, as I like to always champion on this show, and it starts there with Bill O'Day. Obviously, you've seen me interview mayoral candidates during this election cycle. I'll have more mayoral candidates, folks, in the coming weeks here as we approach Election Day once again, 35 days from tomorrow. It seems like this race has been going on forever, but it'll reach its culmination, its conclusion, folks, perhaps coming up in 35 days from tomorrow. Folks, again, we appreciate you tuning in here right now. Obviously, it's 7:30 exactly on the East Coast. And again, we appreciate everyone. Obviously, look at the numbers here. Live traffic, again, always great here as we're closing out the month of September. We'll have some tabulations on traffic for the month of September next Monday night. And I think you'll appreciate the numbers. They're looking very strong, as they usually do here on the Jersey First Television Network. Well, folks, it's what you've been waiting for. I know you always enjoy it. It's time for final thoughts. Folks, something caught my eye last week. And that was an editorial from the president of NJPBS. As you can see, this gentleman behind me there, Scott Kobler, the president and chairman of NJPBS, submitted a op-ed to the New Jersey Globe. And I'll read you some excerpts of it. Not very long, but I found it very interesting. I have to sort of call Scotty out on some stuff here. So last week, Scott Kobler, the president of PBS, the chairman, wrote an op-ed, and it reads as following, quote, I obviously am disappointed that the WNET Board of Trustees voted not to extend its management role of NJPBS under any circumstances. After June 30th of 2026, unless the facts change, NJPBS will go dark, despite the airing by WNET of some news program on its own platform. Let us not forget that With little assured upside, WNET boldly stepped in 14 years ago and ably supported and modernized NJPBS during that span. Over the past many years, my seat has been in the front row. Now, WNET and NJPBS's recent good faith back and forth with the state include a request for a reasonable level of support and was simple, clear, and deserved, particularly given our record. Well, more on that later. A public-private partnership operating the state's retained licenses, NJPBS raised funds from foundations, underwriters, and viewers like you, so we walked the walk. Over several months, we had not shied away from timely responding to the state, but I believe that the state's intransigence or maybe even apathy coupled with federal funding cuts and new media challenges likely influenced WNET's decision to protect its core enterprise as one of our nation's leading public media platforms. So be it, but frankly, it could have been all so much easier. Calls for a top-to-bottom review of New Jersey public media are welcome. Well, you know what? That's true, Scott, but I think it's not even welcome. It's urgent. It's dire. However, it could have started with a more sincere and less rigid understanding by the state from the outset that the landscape is radically different than 2000. That's true. But within disappointment sits opportunity. New Jersey boasts existing vaunted educational, artistic, philanthropic, and civic institutions positioned to coalesce and take this function over to provide an enhanced delivery of facts and stories to our neighbors at a reasonable cost. Plus, we do have elected leaders who have been vocal and who care. This is what's really interesting. I like this little jab. I mean, I'm not saying it was directed at me. I don't think so, even though I've been highly critical of NJPBS. True journalists are not folks who just wake up one day and declare themselves journalists. They are professionals who must follow an ethical code. Okay. Despite shrill chatter to the contrary. I'm so proud of our NJPBS, NJ Spotlight team and what they've accomplished, and I'm sorry that we could not get this particular deal done. Our pivot now should be for us to land our news and stories about smart and diverse New Jersey within our own control and present a valued product to the 9.2 million of us, which we can be prouder. We possess the deep thinkers and leaders, okay, to get it done, and it is eminently doable with willing participants and less intransigence. More to come. Well, Scott, first of all, let me have some tea here because I'm about to spill some tea. Scott, I think it's rich for you to write this. And I'm going to go back to a line that really, really got my attention. True journalists are not folks who wake up one day and declare themselves journalists. They are professionals who must follow an ethical code despite shrill chatter to the contrary. Scott, I hate to break it to you. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you took a long nap and maybe you haven't been awake for it. But folks, ethical code? That's not what I think about when I think about David Cruz. This is listen, and I'll be very fair about it because you've cut your teeth in the business, Dave. You rolled up your sleeves. You got to work years ago. You were the editor of a local newspaper here in Hudson County, and you worked your way up. No question. You've paid your dues in the business. I will not ever disparage that about you. But what I'm going to take you to task on, and what I have been doing for years now, is calling you out on your bullshit. So when your boss, Scott Colbert, writes an editorial like this, that says they are professionals who must follow an ethical code despite shrill chatter to the contrary. David, I mean, really? The reason I call you out and the rest of the establishment media in New Jersey is because you've disappointed us. You have failed to deliver a product that is trustworthy. So when many on the left and progressives, or even you yourself, want to take jabs at, well, government isn't funding us, and you want to take jabs at Republicans in Washington, D.C., sure. The President of the United States and the Republican-controlled Congress, yeah, they want to cut funding to NJPBS. Well, that's their right to do that. They control the legislature. They control the budget. But you know who I don't see you going after? Democrats in New Jersey who've controlled the legislature for over 20 years. And in the most recent state budget, they cut $75 million from NJPBS, and rightfully so. You're delivering a bullshit product. It's as simple as that. Okay? So this crying and complaining about, well, it's an attack on media and journalism. No, folks, if you're delivering a shitty product, David, you have to own it. You're a big boy now, okay? You're a grown-ass man in your early 80s. You have to take some responsibility here. Okay. And I get it. I like watching NJPBS sometimes. I like watching NJ Spotlight News. There's no shortage of eye candy there. We got all these nice MILFs to look at, right? Joanna Gaggis, Brianna Vannozzi, Raven Santana. Listen, these MILFs, I could watch them every day. That's not my objection. My objection is you specifically. So when Scott Kobler wants to write an editorial about, well, it's an attack on public media and journalism. Well, Scott, I mean, again, I get it. I think we all want media. I think we all want trustworthy media. But what have we learned about the establishment media folks in the last decade at the national level and at the state level? They're not looking out for you. They're just not. You want to know why independent media like this show continues to do well? Not because I haven't reinvented the wheel. What I've done is just show you that I'm trustworthy and the establishment media is not. That's the fundamental difference. Uncle Dave can go bitch and moan that I'm a transphobe and I'm a homophobe and I'm a misogynist. Folks, I'm none of those things. But for people like David Cruz and others on the left, when they don't like hearing truthful statements, again, the default mechanism for people like David Cruz is to say, well, you're a blank phobe or you're a blankist, because that's all they live on. And Uncle Dave excels at this bullshit. Okay? Who thought it was a good idea at NJPBS or NJ Spotlight News to hire social justice writers? No one gives a shit about this stuff. Regular New Jerseyans that are worried about affordability, that are just, again, sick of Trenton taking money out of your right pocket, putting it in your left pocket, and then giving it some bullshit gimmick name. I want to credit Jack Chiarelli for that great line at the debate recently. But that's true. Like, why aren't you upset about that? But you know what? 5 summers ago, David Cruz was the first person to rally about social justice. And even though we were living during a pandemic when we had to stay home a lot because the governor shut us down and kept us at home, yeah, when people were out on the street there looting and rioting or walking out there, in support of a career criminal like George Floyd, no, not a peep from David Cruz. David Cruz is nice in his home studio or at Gateway Center talking about, well, hey, man, protest isn't always peaceful. That's the bullshit you've come to learn from David Cruz, folks. And this is why, again, people don't trust establishment media. But just when you think David Cruz can get any whinier and any bitchier, he never disappoints. Now, I'm impressed that Dave's back to work. I mean, we all know Dave. Listen, Dave's he's a person who's pretty lazy. Okay. But what I thought was interesting, you could just hear the tone, how whiny he sounds in the latest edition of Reporters Roundtable, which was brought to my attention. By the way, folks, don't ever believe David Cruz doesn't watch his show, because after I had Brent Johnson on for an hour, who does he have on this week on Reporters Roundtable? He has Brent Johnson on, among others. So, the idea that David Cruz wants to bullshit you or whoever he talks to that he doesn't watch this show, es mierda, because he watches this show. Because he wants to know what good journalism is, he tunes in every Monday night or watches a replay. But folks, last week, and this was just funny because I was at the debate stage at Rider University. And by the way, once again, thank you to David Wallstein and the great staff of the New Jersey Globe and On New Jersey and Laura Jones and Micah Rasmussen from the Rebovich Institute for American Politics at Rider University. Thank you for the invitation. And again, believing in my brand of journalism to bestow press credentials to me, because not everybody gets them. But what was interesting during the media scrum, and I had to laugh, because how I feel about Chucky, right? Uncle, Chucky style, Charles style. Another propagandist masquerading as a journalist. And of course, Dave and him, of course, there's a camaraderie there because they're both propagandists. They're both left-wing propagandists masquerading as journalists for years now. Right? But I thought this was especially funny during last week's edition of Reporters Roundtable. Let me play it for you and tell you why, again, David Cruz is just so sanctimonious and why we're tired of his bullshit. So, David, when you're worried or concerned that people aren't funding public media, guess what? When you give us a shitty product, nobody wants to spend money on it. When you spend money on something and you get a shitty product, you should know that. You're a Met fan. You should know that. You should know about shitty products and putting money into it. You're a Met fan. Again, it's your DNA. But let's go to Reporters Roundtable.
I don't think you were physically there, Aaliyah and Brent. I know that you guys were there. Something about Jack Ciattarelli putting Bergen record columnist Charlie Style in the penalty box. Aaliyah, what do you know about this? Did you see that?
Well, first of all, I was in the media scrum, and when that happened, folks, I mean, again, if anyone has any video of it, if you hear someone laughing like, ha, 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 that was me, because when I got to see Charles Style embarrassed, it made my day. Because, folks, there has to be some accountability. You keep peddling Trump derangement syndrome in your columns. You keep trumping, trumping, I'm excused upon, this left-wing nonsense and woke garbage that Charles Style has become famous for. Sooner or later, David, the bill comes due. Sooner or later, the Trump derangement syndrome gets you in trouble. And sooner or later, a candidate's going to say, F this shit. I don't want to deal with idiots like Charles Style. So good for Jack Ciattarelli, because guess what? When the establishment media does that to conservative candidates or shuts them out or dismisses them like, we know you've done it. Again, David, you have to be a little intellectually honest. I get it, ya tú estás viejo, ya la mente ya está acabada, pero you got to be intellectually honest here. Okay? No one feels bad for Charles Style. He writes shit columns for a shit news site that's lost circulation, that somehow some of his columns are behind a paywall. Who would spend a nickel on this bullshit? Who? I don't. I get a free subscription from some friend of mine that gives me, their username and password. I wouldn't spend a nickel on the bullshit from NorthJersey.com or the Bergen Record or the Star Ledger and NJ.com. ¿Quién quiere pagar para esa mierda? Esa mierda. You should know that. But let's continue.
Yeah, Jack was taking questions from various reporters, and when Charlie was starting to ask a question, he said something along the lines of like, no, like I don't know exact words, I don't remember, but it was something along like, no, I don't want to hear from you, or I'm not going to take a question from you. And I remember being
you're
confused.
In the penalty box,
I don't
honey.
know.
Come on,
I'm sure
pay
there's
attention.
Context there that I don't know about. I mean, Charlie is a columnist, which is a little different than a straight news reporter.
Yeah, he's a shitty columnist, but continue.
But as we all know, like, he reports out his columns and we see him at Gaggles a lot. So I think as a reporter, it did make me think for a second, like, oh, is this going to be the case where if you really, bother a candidate that you're not going to be allowed to ask him questions anymore?
Well, that's not true. And again, it's not about bothering candidates, because I'm sure that, listen, you saw last week, obviously, I was at the media scrum. Representative Cheryl took one of my questions, and so did Jack Ciattarelli. So, again, obviously, both sides are interested in talking to real journalists with real questions, not the bullshit that Charles Style continues to concoct. Folks, don't take my word for it. Go into social media. Go on his X page. The amount of retweeting and insufferable bullshit that he exposes all of you to, again, sooner or later, Chucky, the bill comes due. Sooner or later, you have to be held accountable for your Trump derangement syndrome. You don't get to sort of act with impunity and do whatever the F you want. Sooner or later, you have to be held accountable, Chuck. Chuck doesn't like being held accountable.
And, I think that's something that we've probably seen in different ways. And I don't want to say too much because I don't know the context, but it definitely was a little jarring in the moment.
Yeah. Brent, you ever get a cold shoulder like that so publicly?
Yeah, I'm sure I have. I can't think of it. I've been to way too many press conferences in my life. But yeah, I heard this is a tiff between Jack holds something against Charlie that goes back a while. So I know Charlie's a friend and a colleague. But I'm sure people don't like me either.
Yeah, I never liked Style from the beginning. I'll say that right now.
Well, first of all, I mean, let's be very fair. Brent Johnson's a hell of a reporter. He's been on this show multiple times. I think when we talk about credible journalism, when we talk about, calling balls and strikes, the reason I like talking to people like Brent Johnson is because he does that. Charles Style doesn't call balls and strikes fairly. He just doesn't. Okay? During last year's presidential election, of course, even during this gubernatorial election, you would think that when affordability is suffocating New Jerseyans, when property taxes are front and center, right? When we're hoping that ICE can do their job and get rid of illegals in New Jersey, that is what matters to regular New Jersey residents. But you wouldn't know that reading the bullshit from Charles Style in his columns. You wouldn't know that. You would rather focus on Trump and say, well, oh, MAGA, this. Folks, at the end of the day, the meat and potatoes, the kitchen table issues is what's driving this election. And folks, let's be very honest about something. You can look at all this polling all you want, but the most recent Emerson College poll, which leans predominantly and very heavy towards Democrats, is right now a statistical tie. You know what that tells you? That tells you Jack Chiarelli's up at least 2 or 3 points. Now, we'll see next week during the next debate at the New Brunswick Performing Arts Center on the campus of Rutgers University in New Brunswick, my alma mater. Okay, we'll find out. Certainly the latest scandals involving Representative Cheryl's husband and how her 2 kids mysteriously got into the Naval Academy. I mean, that's something that probably merits some investigation. We'll see if Charles Style will be intellectually honest and covers that, but don't hold your breath, though. But let's continue.
Yeah. He's a Yankees fan.
I've had shouting matches with mayors in the city council chambers and argued many a time with Governor Christie, but they always took my question. I mean, if you're going to be governor of New Jersey, you're going to have to deal with Charlie Style, no? I mean, how do you?
Not really. I mean, Charlie is like in his mid to late 90s. I don't know how much longer he'll be around for, so who knows? But the reality is, David, that, again, when you become insufferable, and you should know about this because you're the king of insufferable, when you continue to be insufferable in your columns, like Charles Style is, sooner or later, there's a receipt coming. That was the receipt that came last week at the hands of Jack Chiarelli. So I get it. You want to stick up for your fellow senior. I get all that. But David, be a little intellectually honest, though. Charles Style's a propagandist. Any journalistic integrity he had, trust me, that disappeared a long, long time ago, just like his hair.
Kenny, how do you just say, no, I'm not going to talk to you? I mean, I love what your sign says behind you. What can I say?
Seriously, what can I say? I don't want to get canceled. As someone who was actually banned from a mayoral press conference in Baltimore because, and keep in mind, I was a straight news reporter, they do it because they can, and damn the consequences, sadly. And I could tell you, also based on my experience, neither Democrat nor Republican could take the high ground when it comes to the First Amendment. And that's sad in all instances. Again, I was banned in Baltimore from a open news conference because the outgoing mayor just didn't want to take my questions. And then she tried to tar and feather me on the way out the door. Thankfully, a lot of people had my back in Baltimore saying, no, you're wrong. He's the nicest guy.
Yeah. We did some reporting this week on.
It's interesting, David. I mean, if you don't like the guy, I mean, why do you have him on Reporters Roundtable so often? I mean, it boggles my mind that somehow people believe this bullshit from David Cruz. It boggles my mind. It really does. Like, who buys this shit? I don't. So does countless other people. So do legislators in Trenton who obviously didn't feel the need to fund NJPBS vis-a-vis NJ Spotlight News. Again, sooner or later, David, again, you put out a shitty product, sooner or later, people don't want to put money into it. As I said, you should know about shitty products. You're a Met fan. Let's continue.
The Charlie Kirk story and how it may be resonating in New Jersey in the governor's race. Brent, is Charlie Kirk an issue in New Jersey?
Yeah, I wrote about this for the newsletter last week. Republicans are saying that, yes, could galvanize younger voters because he was very popular with younger voters. And in a race that's a base election, the base matters and every vote matters. Democrats are saying that, that's overblown. And it just as much the reaction from how Trump.
In fairness, though, Brent, and you're right about that, but in fairness, we have members of the House of Representatives in New Jersey voting no on a House resolution to condemn the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And unfortunately, I mean, let's be honest, we have some representatives like Monica MacGyver, who's pretty despicable in her own right. I mean, let's be honest, as well as Bonnie Watson-Coleman. I mean, that doesn't surprise me. So the idea that maybe, there is some outrage about that, sure, I'm outraged about it. And to her credit, Representative Cheryl voted yes to condemn the assassination of Charlie Kirk. But then, of course, a word salad afterwards, because you have to sort of please your progressive base, right? Like all the insufferable feminists, all the obese feminists and smelly cat ladies in New Jersey that, somehow, right, like get their panties in a bunch about free speech, supposedly, right? And how the murder of Charlie Kirk doesn't matter. It does matter. It does matter. For many on the left, it doesn't. But I mean, again, that just shows how vile many on the left in New Jersey are. But that's not new. But let's continue.
Trump has responded to this whole thing, and other Republicans could galvanize progressive and Democratic voters. So I don't know, but it definitely Charlie Kirk and the assassination and the aftermath, everything that's gone after Jimmy Kimmel and so on, has dominated the political discourse, at least in the political circles. I know Twitter's not the world, but if you go on X, you can see that's what dominated the discourse, and it was here too. So it's definitely coloring the race. I don't know if it's going to be a deciding factor.
Free speech, very much a part of the discussion now, not only here. You have the president targeting media personalities, as Brent just referenced. Aaliyah, are you concerned that people, the public, are just generally kind of saying, oh, well, the president's mad at him, so good for him, and don't realize how free speech erodes and the slippery slope that we can get into?
David, again, you're being disingenuous, which isn't surprising because you live to be disingenuous. No one's attacking free speech here, okay? But when you have media personalities laughing, and listen, you're on Blue Sky. I can't even imagine the cesspool and the bullshit and the vile people on Blue Sky that we all know we're celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk. Okay? God forbid you ever denounce that. So cry me a river about all of a sudden you're concerned about free speech or whatever, because you're the first type of person to cancel or want someone canceled. Or you're the first type of person that when you don't like hearing something, because I know this for a fact, you've watched this show and in your opinion, obviously, you feel that I'm a homophobe, transphobe, misogynist, Islamophobe, xenophobe, right? I mean, you name it. So someone like David Cruz, it's rich for this mother effer to cry about free speech when he's the first person to denounce someone because he doesn't like hearing facts. Because on this show, folks, what I give you are facts. I give you truth. Okay? When I say that trans people are mentally ill, that's true. That's not speculation or hyperbole. That's fact. Do you think David Cruz would say that? Of course not. That will require Uncle Dave to have, espere, cuídate, that 4-syllable word that Uncle Dave struggles with, integrity. Okay? No, David, I don't hate trans people. I just think that if you're going to subscribe to that nonsense, you're mentally ill. I don't subscribe. Listen, I'm not a homophobe. I'm not a xenophobe. I'm not an Islamophobe. I'm not a misogynist. I just call balls and strikes fairly. You struggle with that. We're not the same, bro. Okay? We're not the same. And how selective you are with your reporting also is another point of contention that I have. And I'll talk about Andres Acebo, the president of NJCU, in just a moment during this, during a special comment. But David, when you focus on woke bullshit, on social justice nonsense, on coddling the alphabet mob, okay, that's what you've been doing for God knows how many years now. Sooner or later, people get tired of it across all demographics. We're seeing that. All right? What's so hard to understand? So it's not an attack on free speech, David. You would love to see people canceled. You'd love to see me canceled. There was an attempt to cancel me this summer. And guess what? I'm still on the air. And I'm not going anywhere. Unlike you, that will be unemployed in just a few months. Okay? And people will still tune in to me. Because I work all year. I can't say the same for you. We'll find out. Let's continue.
I don't think we can draw wide conclusions on that yet. I think there
Good job, Aaliyah. Very nice.
People who support the president who do see that and are uneasy because they care so much about free speech. I think the president does have supporters who are happy with that. I do think that, there's different partisan interpretations of what speech should fall under free speech, and I think that is a big concern.
All right, I'm gonna have to leave it there. Aaliyah, thank you. Kenny, Brent.
Gonna have to leave it there because now Reporters Roundtable has been cut to 20 minutes. Used to be like 29 minutes. Now it's like 20 minutes. Cuidado. I think next week will be done at 15 minutes. And before you know it, it'll be like a 7-minute episode. Oh my God. Talk about, hey, Dave, why don't you take a pay cut? Put some money back into the show. I mean, my God, at some point, the show might just become like a 5-minute monologue. Oh, Dios mío. But folks, you get the point. So at the end of the day, as I've said repeatedly on this show, folks, there's no one to blame for what's happened at NJPBS and NJ Spotlight News, because when you have to look at who to blame or what's the cause of it, you can start with David Cruz. So when Scott Kobler writes an editorial, listen, you're entitled to write whatever you want, Scott, but you have to be intellectually honest here. At some point, there was a decision made. Listen, and I miss him to this day, and I love Michael Aaron, the dean of journalism in New Jersey, the GOAT of journalism, as far as I'm concerned. And I get it. David was put in an impossible situation when you have to fill the shoes of the greatest of all time in Michael Aaron. But what's happened since then? It's been a regression of quality and a regression of trustworthiness. It's as simple as that. So, Scott, when you want to go vilify people, don't vilify elected officials at the federal or state level that don't want to fund NJPBS or NJ Spotlight News. Look at the talent or lack thereof on the roster. That's why NJPBS isn't succeeding. That's why NJ Spotlight News isn't trustworthy. When you have blatant propagandists like Este Pendejo on every week. At some point, Scott, again, the bill comes due. It did. Take your medicine. Dave, take your medicine too. You put out a shitty product. You put out shitty journalism and sanctimony and all the woke bullshit that you have loved to cover and give a platform to. That's great. Sooner or later, people get tired of it. People get tired about being fixated on gender and race and all the other identity nonsense. You've excelled at it, and you were great for a while, but sooner or later, people get tired of it. And people did get tired of it. They got tired of it in Trenton. They chose not to fund it. And sooner or later, it's dying out. Maybe you haven't gotten the memo. And again, I've said this on the show all the time. People like David Cruz and Charles Style, you're dinosaurs in this business. I'm the future of independent media. We're not the same. So these dinosaurs, they can keep going, but sooner or later, meteor's coming, David. It's not going to be good to be you. Again, here on this show, it's real conversations, it's real topics, it's real traffic, because it's real talk. We're not the same, David. We never will be. And those are my final thoughts. Folks, a special comment tonight, and it's I'm going to break it down a little bit into some specific ones. A special comment. Let's start with a friend of mine. And let me give you some context here about Darren Conway. I've known Darren Conway for almost 15 years now. Okay? Many of Friday nights and Saturday nights at the end of the 2000s, early 2010s, going to Lulu's on the rooftop of the W Hotel in Hoboken. That was a scene in nightlife in Hoboken for a lot of years. That's where I got to meet Darren Conway. There at Lulu's, at the W Hotel. And folks, Darren's a great guy. He's a good father, good businessman. I don't have a bad word to say about Darren Conway, the man, the human. But Darren, I have to call you out on some bullshit here. And listen, you can run a business however you want. Now, here's some context. I've enjoyed going to Pier 13 since the summer of 2012. I've enjoyed the sangria. Yes, it's gone up in price like everything else. I've enjoyed birthdays there. I've enjoyed taking girlfriends over the years, first dates, regular hookups, recycled girls that I've hung out with. I love Pier 13. It's been a great venue. I don't have any disillusions about it. I've enjoyed it. When I don't want to wake up early on a Sunday and sit in traffic on the Garden State Parkway to go down the shore or sit in traffic on the way back, I've said, hey, I'll catch an Uber or Lyft, or I'll just drive down to Hoboken to Pier 13 and enjoy my Sunday with friends and significant others and whoever, drinking sangria, eating good food. I've enjoyed it. But Darren, what you're doing lately is a concern. And I get it. You want to appeal to as many different customers and demographics as possible. And you have a right to provide service to whoever you want. Now, I haven't been banned yet from Pier 13, and we'll see if maybe this monologue might contribute to it in the future. I don't know, since we're wrapping up the summer season at Pier 13. But over the summer, Darren, again, you've done it for a few summers already. It seems like you feel the need to acquiesce and to coddle and to, kiss up to the alphabet mob in Hudson County. From nearby Jersey City and, of course, in Hoboken. Now, it's bad enough that in the city of Hoboken, we have Ravi Bala and the Lollipop Guild, the Charisma Vacuum, Phil Cohen, the Prom Queen Emily Jabor, the Lush that is, Joe Quintero, and, the Walking Scarecrow, Jim Doyle. It's bad enough that during Pride Month, we have to go through all the usual virtue signaling in Hoboken. The crosswalks are repainted in downtown. God forbid use that money to hire more cops, Ravi. But, again, we all know what your modus operandi is. And I get it, Darren, that you feel the need to cater to this crowd during a Pride event. Not a problem. But where I have an issue with is the fact that regular customers can't voice disapproval. Now, full context here. On Pier 13's Instagram page, all of my pages have been banned from the Pier 13 page. They've been banned for simply Fernando Uribe writing this. Now, you can't see it there, obviously, folks, but obviously it's a screenshot of their advertisement for Pride Day at Pier 13. Now, this is what I wrote, so I'm not embellishing anything. It's there. Okay. I wrote, shame on parents bringing their children to this. There's no need to glorify drag queens, which there isn't, and embolden trans people when we all know, well, those of us that understand biology, in parentheses, that men can never be women, regardless of how much they engage in dress up and make-believe. Thankfully, as a country, we are moving away from the woke nonsense. There are already 145 days on the calendar celebrating this community, and it still isn't enough for them. That's true. There's 145 calendar days, folks, for the alphabet mob. And still they're going to bitch and moan. Take your pick. Whether it's insufferable, feminists and lesbians like Kayla Burrell or Liz Scheidel, or the obese feminists in Jersey City that were vilifying me over the summer, or, take your pick. All the cat ladies. Amy Wilson and all the other idiots in Jersey City, right? Like some of the Jersey City moms or the Moms for Action, whatever, in Hoboken. They're probably already a box of wine in tonight, tuning in, obviously. I know I'm over it, and so are many others. Please stop enabling this stuff. Thank you. Now, of course, my comment was deleted, but of course, I made sure to take a screenshot of it. But folks, again, this is what we've had to endure at Pier 13 over the summer. Not just, during Pride Month, but now at the end of July and early August. Really, Darren? And I get it. It's a business. You're catering to every possible customer. You want to squeeze every dollar you possibly can. I don't knock you for that. What I knock you is being a child and trying to silence people that are just concerned, as I said right at the beginning. Shame on parents for bringing their children to this. Okay? Shame on parents and you encouraging this on Pier 13. Grown men playing dress up and make-believe. How is this healthy? How is this remotely a good environment for kids? Folks, I've been going to Pier 13 since 2012. It is a remarkable venue for a lot of new parents to bring their babies or small children to. I see it all the time. How is this healthy, Darren? How is this healthy to expose kids to? You have kids, don't you? Now, again, I don't know if you bring your wife and daughters to Pier 13. I don't know if you do during these events. I can't speak of it. I refuse to go to these events, and I'll happily go down the shore when these events take place at Pier 13. But deleting comments and then blocking because you just don't like comments, that's childish, Darren. You should know better. I get it. It's your business. You can cater to whatever customer you want. That's not my issue. My issue is this is concerning that you think it's acceptable to expose children to this nonsense, to grown men dressing up as women. How is that remotely healthy to expose children to? How? Explain that to me, Darren, without blocking me or deleting my comments. Because I'm willing to have the conversation. I do it on the show all the time. But it's easier to just delete comments, block people, and not hear an alternative point of view. I get it. Unfortunately, that's the world we live in with people that identify with those on the left. Now, I don't know what Darren Conway's political affiliation is, whether he's a registered voter, who he votes for. That doesn't concern me. And again, let me be very clear about Darren Conway. I like you, Darren. I still do. I don't like these childish antics by you and blocking people on social media just because they offer a different point of view and just because I stand up for parents that are concerned that their kids might be exposed to this bullshit. That parents will be taking their kid. Maybe they don't know. Maybe they don't follow. Maybe they don't have social media. Maybe they don't know that it's Pride Day at Pier 13. Maybe they don't realize, again, and maybe they're bringing their child for the very first time. Maybe they just moved to Hoboken. And on a day in late July and August, this is what kids have to be exposed to. Darren, how is that healthy, dude? I'm sorry. I'll stand up for parents because other people won't do that in the establishment media. Nobody will. That's why independent media is thriving, because I'll call out this woke bullshit. Now, again, I was just there yesterday, and I'm happy to be a customer. But Darren, you effed up there, man. You're a grown-ass man. Stop being a child. Understand that people have different points of view. Understand that people don't agree with children being exposed to this nonsense. Whether it's drag queens or trans people, mentally ill people, trans people, who somehow want us to believe that whatever amount of makeup or surgeries is going to make a man a woman. No, it's not. Okay? It just isn't, Darren. You should know better. You're a dad. You have daughters. At some point when your daughters grow up, and let's say they play sports, I don't think you want boys playing or changing in the locker room with them, Darren. It's as simple as that, man. So sure, block me on social media. That's not a problem. I don't care. It doesn't bother me. But I am going to call you out on your bullshit, because it is bullshit. Do better, Darren. I love Pier 13. I'll keep going there. But stop catering to this bullshit. Stop catering to grown men dressing up in dresses. Stop catering to the alphabet mob. And I get it. They'll have their little hissy fits. I know this firsthand because I saw it during the summer when they attempted to cancel me in Jersey City and Hoboken. Nice try, though, because I'm still in the air. But do better, Darren. Listen, you don't have to like my opinion, but just blocking a regular customer and someone you've known for over 15 years, that's petty bullshit, man. That's petty shit. You should know better. We're about almost the same age demographic. I'm not petty. I don't engage in shit like this. Do better, man. Continuing on with a special comment, folks, I do want to thank Uribe-September for his faith in this brand of journalism that I bring you every single week. And I want to congratulate him again. I was invited to the investiture at New Jersey City University recently, as he was established and inducted as the 13th president of NJCU. And the accomplishments don't stop coming, folks. You'll be happy to know, again, via the Hudson County Chamber of Commerce and HOLA, that Uribe-September was bestowed the Visionary Award last week. So I'm going to say right now, shout out to Uribe-September, his beautiful family, his wife Janice, their beautiful children, his family, for this great accomplishment, for a great person like Uribe-September. And this is a guy that should get more press coverage. Newsflash, alert Uncle Dave. This is a guy you should have been interviewing consistently on your show. But of course not. And I don't want to accuse you of anything, but you're kind of striking me as one of those Puerto Ricans that don't like Cubans. Like successful prosperous Cubans like Andres Acebo, Fernando Uribe. I get it. You're a little petty. I get it. But these are the people that need to be featured more by the establishment media. I'm happy to plug Andres Acebo. He's a friend of this show. He comes on regularly because he believes in my brand of independent media. But more importantly, I believe in Andres Acebo. And unlike shitty journalists and mierda like Ron Zentlinger and Josh Rosario and Terry West at the now defunct Jersey Journal, I was the only journalist really talking to Andres Acebo regularly, highlighting all of his great accomplishments, taking NJCU from the brink of bankruptcy to the pinnacle of success. And that's what he's done. So I'm sorry I have to kind of give people lessons in journalism. Now, I never taught a journalism class. Maybe I should. Maybe I should start teaching one. Because the guy knows I practice it very well here on this show. I can't say the same for the others in establishment media. But once again, another reminder about how exceptional and how excellent Andres Acebo continues to be, and how he continues to take NJCU into the future as its 13th president. Way to go, Andres. Love you, man. Felicidades. Keep up the good work. You're representing us all well at NJCU. And folks, before we wrap it up here on a special comment during the broadcast, shout out to the city of Union City for its 100th birthday and anniversary this year. And yesterday I was privileged enough to be at the 100th centennial celebration and the parade that took place on Burger Lane Avenue, starting at 48th Street, going all the way down to 2nd Street. By the way, do you think maybe some establishment media could have covered this? Folks, you had a great homage by David Wallstein, the editor of the New Jersey Globe, in highlighting America's mayor, Brian Stack, and the great work that he's done. And the great, well, let's be honest, folks, constituent services, you name it. But you saw it on full display yesterday with a glorious parade, a lot of wonderful floats, a lot of cultural representation, great representation by the Union City Board of Education, arguably the best school district anywhere in the state of New Jersey. I'll double down on that one. Okay, great floats. As a matter of fact, some great cultural representation yesterday.
Y amigos llegando de Bolivia y del Paraguay.
And of course, some great political representation during this centennial celebration.
Honduras, Costa Rica. A ver, mi gente latina, arriba, 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 arriba. ¿Cómo dice? ¿Cómo dice?
Folks, good stuff there yesterday during the centennial celebration in Union City, where there's various flags being represented, the great work by all the great administrators and the staff in the Union City Board of Education and the Union City School District, all the schools being represented. Folks, it was a hell of an afternoon yesterday on Burger Lane Avenue. And a very unseasonably warm day in late September, but it was great to be out there, get some sun, and to show support for the best municipality anywhere in New Jersey, folks. It's the city of Union City. We've had celebrations all year long, great events for families, for kids, for our neighbors and residents. And you know who we can thank for that? Yeah, folks, a fellow member of Cowboys Nation. That's right. My good friend, the Honorable Brian Stack, our mayor and state senator here. But folks, he doesn't do it alone. He does it obviously with the great work that he has with our Board of Commissioners in Union City. Commissioners Lucio Fernandez, Salim Valdivia, Wendy Gruon, Marjorie Martinetti, all the great men and women that work at 3715 Palisade Avenue at City Hall, and all the great staff. That's how we're able to get a great centennial celebration, not just yesterday during the parade, but the entire year in 2025, as Union City celebrates 100 years. Right? Now, if you missed any part of David Wallstein's Inside Edge, which, by the way, folks, again, if you follow David Wallstein on X and also follow the New Jersey Globe, you'll see that every morning he publishes the Inside Edge. And today's Inside Edge was especially complimentary of America's Mayor, Brian Stack. Folks, nobody works harder or more diligently, and no one's more attentive with constituent services, and no one works harder at being accessible to the public than Union City Mayor Brian Stack. So congratulations to Mayor Stack, the Board of Commissioners, the City of Union City for its centennial celebration. If you missed any part of it, obviously, folks, there's tons of content out there. Obviously, on my social media pages, also on Hudson County TV, HUD Post, Hudson County View, Tap Intos, the patches. Folks all covered it yesterday. A great celebration for a great city led by a great mayor and a great Board of Commissioners. Once again, congratulations to the City of Union City in celebrating 100 years here in Hudson County. Folks, and that's my special comment. And that's our show for this week. Once again, I want to thank County Commissioner and Jersey City mayoral candidate Bill O'Day for an exceptional interview tonight, covering about what's going on as, folks, 35 days from tomorrow, Jersey City will elect a new mayor, maybe a runoff going into December, but obviously there are choices in Jersey City. Certainly you have them there with Jim McGreevy, Bill O'Day, Christina Freeman, even a used car salesman like Musab Ali, and certainly, virtue singer like James Solomon, and insufferable women like Stuart Thomas who work on his campaign. But you have choices, folks. Do your reading, do your research, and vote accordingly. Coming up as vote by mail has begun. Early voting comes in late October. And of course, you can vote in person on November the 4th. Folks, make sure you always check us out on our social media. Like us on Facebook, of course, follow us on Instagram and X. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Great traffic I see so far here on the live views tonight, and of course on the replays throughout the week. And of course, whether you get your podcast on Spotify or SoundCloud, download Jersey First and take it with you anywhere at any time. Of course, I can't say enough, ladies and gentlemen, about being right in the forefront, front and center, folks. It is Jersey First TV. Brand new episodes of Real Talk come to you every Monday night. Check your local listings for start times, of course, here as I'll bring you the best analysis and commentary about everything going on in New Jersey politics. It's always right here because it's real conversations with real people, with real traffic, because it's Real Talk. And always remember, folks, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it's Real Talk right here on the Jersey First Television Network. Once again, I am the generational talent in Garden State media, and I'll continue to be the hero you need right now, folks, because as the establishment media continues to lie to you, guess who won't? Fernando Uribe. That's right. It's me. Folks, enjoy the rest of your week. Please party responsibly. Folks, I can't say enough. Let's go Yankees. Let's go. Let's go Yankees. Let's get World Series Championship number 28. Starts tomorrow night in the Bronx during the wild card round against the hated rivals, the Boston Red Sox. Let's get out of the wild card round, folks. Let's go. Let's get championship number 28 back to the Bronx. So let's go Yankees. I can't say it enough. Again, look after your elderly neighbors. Folks, please drive carefully in the mornings and in the afternoons. Again, kids are back in school. Let's make sure they get to school safely and they get back home safely. Look after your elderly neighbors, folks. And again, we appreciate you tuning in here and making this a part of your Monday night viewing here with Jersey First TV. Folks, again, enjoy yourselves. Enjoy the rest of the week. We'll see you next Monday night here live, folks. The latest edition of Real Talk via the Jersey First Television Network. Thanks for stopping by. And always remember, stay classy, everyone.